Tonight on CFTK-TV, we'll have a preview of Guns and Hoses in Kitimat, RFK Jr. gets grilled in Congress for past beliefs, and how Islamophobia has increased in Canada.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. For our first story of the day, it's from Alice Barr from NBC News, who has the details about a plane collision that occurred yesterday right after we got off the air. And this happened down in Washington, D.C. between a U.S. Army helicopter as well as an American Airlines plane, leaving over 60 people dead. Here's Alice down in the Capitol.
Tragedy in the air and in the water.
I just saw a fireball and then it was just gone. So I haven't seen anything since they hit the river.
After a passenger plane collided with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter near Reagan National Airport, sending both aircraft plunging into the Potomac River and touching off an urgent search.
The water that we're operating in is about 8 feet deep. There is wind, there is pieces of ice out there, so it's just dangerous and hard to work in.
The plane, now in pieces in the river, is an American Airlines regional jet coming from Wichita, Kansas, with 60 passengers and 4 crew members aboard. 3 people on board the Black Hawk helicopter on a training flight, according to a U.S. military official. NBC News Washington reporting from 2 sources that at least a dozen bodies have been recovered. Kansas senators joining in an overnight briefing.
Tonight, we mourn with the families who lost loved ones, and we truly are joining them in prayer and wrapping our arms around them in love and compassion.
President Trump saying he'd been fully briefed on the terrible accident as details begin to emerge about who was in that passenger plane. U.S. figure skating confirming that several coaches, athletes, and family members were returning from a training camp for top juvenile figure skaters. Families who had gone to the airport for reunions now facing devastation amid a search for answers about what went wrong. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Now over to local news. We head to the coast, where the city of Prince Rupert is now seeking out all the support that they can get in order to win the Kraft Hockeyville nomination for 2025. And the prize for doing so is a total of $250,000. Residents have until March 2nd to send out photos, notes, and stories to show why they should win, since the rally points are said to count for 20% of their judging. The competition will announce the 4 finalist communities on March 15th and 1 final nationwide vote to determine the winner, which will happen on April 4th. Now over to Kitimat, where it's come time for an annual tradition, which is the Guns and Hoses hockey game. And this year's funds raised are going to a new cause from this firefighter and police showdown. Here's Jaylene Matthews with CFTK-TV with that story.
This year's game has been named the Showdown in Snowtown.
And we get the community out. We play a fun game of hockey between the firefighters and the RCMP, and we raise money.
And the family favorite event is taking on a new cause in 2025.
The Firefighters Ladder of Hope Charitable Foundation. All the money that's raised is going back to the nonprofit sports in Kitimat. So any sports teams that are nonprofit, the money is going to go back to the kids.
And in a tense race between Sparky Dog and Safety Bear, Sparky took the win.
The RCP did win last year. It was a really good game. We won 7-4. The year before that was the first year since the pandemic. The fire department beat us, so it's kind of one-to-one since the pandemic. We did win. We were really happy about the win, but of course it's not about that. It's always about raising money for the kids.
The puck drops February 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Tamatik Arena. Doors open at 6 and entry is by donation.
Who's your money on?
Oh, it's going to have to be the RCMP. There is a little bit of concern that the fire department's raised about the reffing, so we're going to, we might have some undercover spies or something helping with the reffing this year just to make sure that everything's going to be above board there. So,
for CFTK-TV News in Kitimat, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And those waiting on the reopening of the Kitimat ice rink still have a long road ahead, as the District of Kitimat recently updated the public with a better timeline on when progress will be made. The district says they expect to initiate tender process by the end of January with an award for the work no later than the end of February. Only then will they know how long repairs will take and when the rink can reopen. A coach from a local hockey team expressed what a challenge it's been to schedule the entire town season around only one ice rink. The district says they recognize that some felt it's taken a long time to reach this point since the fire occurred in March of 2024. They say it's been a long and technically intense process as well. Now, in a post on their Facebook page, the City of Terrace has announced that the local library will be getting its own accessible parking lot installed. The current plan is for the parking lot to be fully installed by the end of this summer at the bare minimum, according to the post. And the lot is also set to make it easier for people with disabilities, impairments, or any other type of mobility challenges to enter the building without assistance. Work on constructing the lot may start as early this week, and while it was acknowledged that nearby trees would be trimmed or removed for this project, the city will plant new trees to serve as replacements. In the Terrace and Thornhill community, the Skeena Climbing Society is now in the middle of gaining funds to one day have their own boulder gym. One of the members, Shannon Lawrence, had a chance to give us a debrief on what the society is all about.
Put out some surveys to the community at large as well as to our members, and the feedback has just been so loud and unified that there's a need for more indoor climbing opportunities. Obviously this first part is the big push, but just the startup is more possible, the insurance is lighter, the statistics on injuries is much safer than rope climbing, and because we want to introduce the community at large to climbing, we don't just want this to serve the climbers, we want the ecosystem model. We are planning this to be suitable for absolute beginners, but also to be interesting to experienced climbers so that you have people demonstrating. We need to show more funds in our account, so that's why we're doing the GoFundMe, so that we have seed money, and then when we apply for grants, it gives us more points. But we're also looking for corporate partnerships and private partnerships, so but we want to keep it nonprofit and for the community is our goal so that it stays accessible.
An announcement from the Prince Rupert Port Authority has emerged stating that the PRPA is partnering up with the Metlakatla Development Corporation to develop a project. The project in question is known as the South Kayan Import Logistics Park and is being described as over $100 million in Indigenous-led joint venture that will ultimately bolster intermodal trade via the Prince Rupert Gateway, create new jobs for local Indigenous workers, and also result in long-term economic benefits for Metlakatla. The full statement is available on the Port Authority's website. Coming up next, it has been 8 years since the mosque shooting in Quebec City. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, it's been almost 10 years now where a shooting in Quebec ended up killing a number of Muslims praying in a mosque, and those in the community want Canadians to be more aware of the circumstances that some of them face today. With more, here's CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin.
Il n'y a plus rien à Gaza.
In a Montreal square, a few people gathered for a vigil, calling on Canadians to do more to remember the day bullets shattered the peace of prayer.
The only reason this happened is ignorance. There is no other reason. These people were going in the most peaceful place on earth. It's a mosque. They are praying.
Traces of the deadly rampage on this sacred place of worship have all but been erased. Only a single bullet hole remains in memory. But 8 years on, some fear memories too have faded. Hate and ignorance of the other were the main factors in this tragedy, said Mosque President Mohamed Labidi last week, and those linger. Once a moment of unity, this year commemorative ceremonies in Quebec City have been muted. This while the need to never forget grows, say those fighting Islamophobia.
The green represents the carpet where they, had their last breaths.
Canada's special representative on combating Islamophobia points to frightening statistics. Police reported hate crimes targeting Muslims rose 94% in 2023, and Islam remains the least favorably viewed of Canada's major religions.
Canada is a place where we have so many vibrant cultures and backgrounds and people, and this is something to be very proud of. It's something we need to work and foster when there are so many efforts to undermine our unity. We got to hold together against that.
In the days after the mosque shooting, this very square here was filled with dozens and dozens of people standing up in solidarity. Organizers here say what a difference 8 years makes, and they want people to come out again, to support people, to fight against hate together. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
And now we move on to your local weather forecast for tonight and the week ahead. Tonight in Prince Rupert, it should have clear conditions with lighter winds at 15 kilometers per hour with a colder than usual temperature at -6 with a wind chill at -4 in the evening and -9 overnight. In Terrace and Kitimat should have partially cloudy conditions followed by snow. The wind will be coming from the north at 20 kilometers per hour from midnight up until the morning. There will be a low of -7 with a wind chill of -8 at night and -14 overnight. The Bulkley Valley should be cloudy with a 40% chance of flurries in the evening, and snow should be starting later in the evening with about 2 centimeters in total. Winds from the northeast will be the case, which should calm down after midnight, and the low will be -11 with a wind chill of -12 in the evening and -17 overnight. On to your weekly weather forecast. Though colder temperatures, the North Coast residents should get a good amount of vitamin D this week, with about 4 of the next 5 days being sunny, with Saturday being the outlier with a slight chance of flurries on Saturday. The high will be 0 degrees on Tuesday, while the low will be -12 on Monday night. Terrace and Kitimat will have some snow and flurries over the next couple of days, followed by sunny conditions as we hit Sunday during the daytime. The high will be -3 on Friday, while the low will be -14 on Sunday and Monday night. And the Bulkley Valley should see a similar pattern with more snow and cloudier conditions for the next couple of days, followed by a couple of days of sun starting on Sunday. The high will be -7 tomorrow during the afternoon, and the low will be -22 on Sunday night. Now we take a look at your Northwest Roadside Report. For additional updates, make sure to check out drivebc.ca. Highway 16 has fog patches between Skeena and Doreen, compact snow from Vanderhoof to Prince George, and slippery sections throughout. Highway 37 has fog patches between Terrace and Kitimat, slippery sections from Kitwanga to Meziadin Junction, and compact snow between Cranberry Junction to the Yukon border. Highway 37A has compact snow throughout and shoulder maintenance near Bear Glacier National Park. Highway 118 has slippery sections. The Nishka Highway has fog patches, and Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections. These are what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. receives backlash in Congress over past beliefs. Hello again. Well, the Bank of Canada Governor in Tiff Macklem has a big week ahead for him and his team as the trade war looms between Canada and the United States. However, right now, he does believe that Canada remains in a good place financially. Here's Mike Lecouture over in Ottawa.
In the case of a protracted, significant trade conflict, it would badly hurt economic activity in Canada. Economic activity would be lower.
How much lower remains unclear. However, the Bank of Canada has gamed out one scenario that sees a global trade war, where the U.S. applies 25% tariffs on all countries and everyone reciprocates. In that case, the Canadian economy would take a massive hit.
If you thought growth was going to be 2%, if you take 2.5% off 2, you've got a negative number. So yes, people would call that a recession.
The governor of the Bank of Canada says it's tough to predict what U.S. President Donald Trump will decide on tariffs. However, Tiff Macklem believes the Canadian economy is in a good position given inflation is in the so-called sweet spot.
It's below the 2% target now, even though some of the core measures are still trending a little bit above the target. Given that the unemployment rate has gone up, the economy, it's growing, it's moving forward, but not at a strong pace.
Macklem hasn't ruled out further rate cuts, but he has to consider possible tariffs and whatever stimulus package the government may put forth to help Canadians affected by a trade war. Sources tell CTV News the relief could reach pandemic levels, but economists warn against repeating COVID-era mistakes.
Obviously led to a very significant increase in the deficit, and which we're still dealing with to some extent, but it also contributed in a very powerful way to the inflation that we've seen. And the fact that Bank of Canada raised interest rates as much as they did.
The governor of the central bank says monetary policy can't offset the effects of higher tariffs. But Macklem does have the tools that can help the economy adjust to whatever comes from the U.S.
Now, moving on down south of the border, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went through a grilling process over his past statements about vaccines and conspiracy theories. This comes at a time where he is being chosen by President Donald Trump to oversee the dozens of agencies for the health of Americans. Joy Malbin with CTV News has more on this story.
Mr. Kennedy, do you have the support?
He's part of the Kennedy dynasty, tapped by President Donald Trump to oversee American health coverage, from vaccine policy to food safety. Vowing to make America healthy again, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has spoken out against vaccines from COVID to polio.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Confronted with his past statements, Kennedy denied it.
News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or anti-industry. I am neither. I am pro-safety.
Interrupted by demonstrators, even his own family and cousin Caroline urged lawmakers to reject his nomination.
Bobby has gone on to misrepresent, lie, and cheat his way through life.
For hours, senators grilled Donald Trump's controversial pick.
Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine?
I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden, so bringing this up right now is dishonest.
And things got testy.
Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what the developer of
I
Lyme
want all
disease
of our colleagues to hear it, Mr. Kennedy.
As a Democrat, Kennedy was pro-choice. Now that he's joined the Trump administration, he's opposed to abortion in most cases.
When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy. I serve at the pleasure of the president. I'm going to implement his policies.
Called dangerous and unqualified, with Republicans in the majority, Kennedy will likely survive the hearing with a final vote next week. Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
Now we take a look at the stock market, where the index category saw an increase in all four sections today. The Canadian dollar is up 1/10 of a penny. The price of gold is up about $52. Oil is up 11 cents. Natural gas is down 12 cents. And aluminum is up $20. In Toronto, the TSX is up 335 points. The Venture Index is up 14. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 168. And NASDAQ is up 49. Still ahead, a new form of soccer has emerged that has leagues starting up from around the country. Welcome back to our final segment here on CFTK-TV. Though cuts in the radio industry have been a common headline, especially in the last 5 years or so, those who worked in the industry are still sure that radio has a place in the broadcasting world. CTV's Yasmin Gandam has the rest of this story.
When a storm hit or emergency struck, this is what people depended on: the radio.
You lose a cell tower to a fire,
and your cell phone's gone, and you can't get any information there. Radio is still there.
Brian Antonsen was an on-air host at CKNW in the late 1960s. He was just 14 years old when Typhoon Frida hit and swept up the west coast to BC.
NW was the only station that stayed on the air on the west coast of North America that night.
He says AM radio may be shifting, but he believes it will survive.
The ones that thrive are the information stations, news, traffic, and things like that.
Do you see those going away?
No.
No?
No. There will be change. There's always change.
Though the medium has changed from the 60s, he says when an emergency happens, it's still a fail-safe.
But if we had some kind of a power outage, in would go the batteries, and I would be able to listen to that.
It comes as many AM radio stations across Canada have gone dark, including AM 730, Vancouver's all-traffic radio station.
I'm most discouraged by the bloodshed across the country.
This broadcast analyst says it's disheartening to see, but AM radio is needed.
The local nature of it, and people sort of identifying with their on-air host.
For listeners like Antonsen, it isn't just about getting the news.
Radio can be there as a friend, as an accompaniment, no matter what you're doing.
Although it is difficult to see the cuts and changes to AM radio, he believes it will play on.
It's got lots of life in it yet.
Yasmin Gandam, CTV News, Mission.
And there's a new sport that has been making waves over the past few seasons, and that is walking soccer, which may be the next popular activity, such as the game of pickleball. Allison Bamford has our final story of the day over in Saskatoon.
This isn't your typical game of pickup soccer. The net's smaller, the rules slightly different, and how you move matters the most.
You can move quite quickly, but you have to drag your feet.
1 foot on the ground at all times. That's walking soccer's golden rule.
The not running is the hardest part. So you have to kind of learn to marathon walk, otherwise you will end up running.
But make no mistake, they still work up a sweat. Good exercise and a great substitute for Rob Husband, whose running days are over.
Everything kind of starts wearing out with time, but this kind of gives you another opportunity to still continue to play the game.
A slower-paced sport that's gaining momentum, especially in provinces like Ontario and BC, where competitive leagues are popping up for several age groups. Many hope the game reaches pickleball's level of popularity.
There's quite a few younger folks as well who play, and when I say young, I mean as young as like late 20s, for example.
The average age on the pitch here is between 55 and 65. At 78, David Taylor is the oldest one out there, playing with athletes he competed against 20 years ago.
It's about still keeping up friendships. You know, that's what it is, more than anything.
Good game.
And in these drop-in games, competition is second to camaraderie. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
And that'll be all for our cast tonight. From everyone here at CFTK-TV, we thank you very much for watching and have a lovely rest of your evening.